We're talking with Tom Edwards about the history of Laurel Street Methodist Church and about his memories of his early days there, and then we're going to go up through probably the most catastrophic thing Tom can remember, other than 9/11 or a tsunami. Tom, when did you first start going to Laurel Street?
I think I started somewhere around in 1948. I was a member of Pace Memorial. My parents were and grandparents, and so we lived in the neighborhood of Laurel Street, and Pace Memorial was a type of church that had no youth in it, even back in those days, because of the type of neighborhood of older people, Presswood Apartments, Monroe Terrace Apartments. So we knew other people that went down there that were young, and so we started going down there somewhere around when I was about 16 years old.
Did you meet anybody special there? Is that where you met Archie?
No, I had known her before then, and she wasn't a member of Laurel Street. She was went to Christian Missionary Alliance Church, and that's where her mother belonged, and up at Stewart Avenue in Mulberry. So I guess she began singing in the choir because so many of the people we knew, young people, sang in the choir then, and so she started attending Laurel Street also. I would say back in the early 50s anyway. But
when were you all married?
We were married in April 26, 1956. Not in Laurel Street Church. At the time we would get married, we didn't have a big wedding. We would just have somebody stand up with us. The preacher there was Elmore Brown.
Oh, yeah.
And he was going to be away. So we went to, he recommended, and he got to preach at Central Methodist on Porter Street, and his name was Beverly Felty.
No.
You remember that?
I sure do.
Yeah, well. And the first preacher we had there, because when I went to Laurel Street, they were between ministers. Carlos Gardner had some problems and left the ministry. And so they had some interim. I don't even think he was an ordained minister, but he was served there for months until Raleigh Mann came.
Raleigh Mann was really a spark plug, wasn't he?
He was that. I really liked him a whole lot.
He was a guy that church was really, it was sort of at loose ends when he got there, wasn't it?
It certainly was. The Carlos Gardner, I didn't know him very well. I'd seen him before, but he had an alcohol problem.
Yeah.
And the church, of course, then was not at its biggest strength it had been, some years past.
Yeah.
And there was some problems, financial and attendance, because most of the members that did attend didn't live in the neighborhood anymore.
Yeah. So Raleigh Mann came there, and he really got things moving in a hurry, didn't he?
Yeah, he did, and he made a lot of nice contacts with people. I think he molded them together in the church, and but he left after 4 years, and most of us was very sorry for him to leave.
That was that old Methodist thing in those
days. 4 years.
4 and out.
Following him, though, came Lambert Tennell. He didn't last but 2 years. 2 years is all he lasted.
Well, when Raleigh came there, it was, you all were preparing for the 100th anniversary at that point, weren't you?
Certainly were, yeah.
And Raleigh was there for the 100th anniversary.
Yeah, I think he came in. Didn't they switch ministers in October in those days?
Yeah, they did.
Back in October. So he was there, I guess, at the time and for the 100th anniversary. And, of course, it had been, like Gilbert said before, much planning had been going on before he came.
Yeah. What do you remember most about Laurel Street Church in those early days that you were there?
Well, I remember mostly we had a youth MYF back in those days, in which we as young teenagers attended. And then we did have a youth group there, one time of young married couples. And we always had Saturday night movies there for the kids in the neighborhood. That was put on down in the basement level there, and they would rent a movie and show it to the kids, and they'd have naturally popcorn and things, which was nice for the neighborhood kids. And I do remember, because I had a lot of young friends that went there at that time, and like I said, a lot of them were in the choir. And so we had some enjoyable times with the MYF and the young adult get-togethers after that.
Now, you met Uchi, and you all had known each other, but really, Laurel Street became your home church at that point, didn't it?
Yeah, it certainly did. My mother and I had 3 brothers and a sister, and we all went there. My father was at First Baptist at the time. He was Baptist, and he never went with us to church or anything, but he did go there. And but we went to Laurel Street, because we only lived about 3 blocks from it. Yeah. And so it was very easy for us to go. And another thing they had back in that day, and I was interested in and played a lot, was softball team.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we were in the West End Church League with Laurel Street softball team.
That was a big league, wasn't it?
It was.
A lot of active
churches, and it was a big church league, and we had a fairly good team. We couldn't compete with Park Avenue Baptist or First Baptist because they had better pitchers.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun.
You went with the fire department. What year did you go with the fire department?
In August of 1955.
That was your career, wasn't it?
Yeah, I spent 37 years there.
I'd say that's a career. Pushing ahead to 1968, tell us about the fire. What was your first? You were on duty that night, weren't you?
Yeah, I was on duty. I was a lieutenant in charge of platoon at number 10 engine company at Lombard and Broad, 1609 West Broad, which is today the Firehouse Theater.
Yeah.
And back in those days, in a residential area, we would always send 2 engine companies and a ladder company on an initial alarm. And I think I've been told this, and I think it was pretty true, because I know the guy that he's still around that was the first in on there, that whoever called the alarm in reported a tree on fire. And that's probably what they could see their windows through some trees or something. And so he immediately, when he arrived, he knew what it was, and he sounded the second alarm, and which I responded on, the second alarm. And I was told when I arrived, my assignment was, a company, was we'd make sure the fire was contained and stayed out of Pine Street Baptist Church. So we did a good job of doing that.
How close was Pine Street Baptist to Laurel Street?
About a 25-foot alley separated them.
So
the back ends of both churches.
They were end to end.
Mm-hmm. So we were fortunate to be able to.
Did Pine run parallel? Pine runs parallel to Laurel, doesn't it?
Yeah, Pine runs parallel to Laurel, and both of them are on the corner of Laurel and Albemarle.
Yeah.
Pine Street just faced Pine Street.
Yeah.
Laurel Street faced the Laurel Street. And so they didn't have any damage to that church.
By the time you got there, what did it look like?
Oh, it was coming through the roof. It was totally involved, particularly the back end. Maybe not so much up near the front at that time, but towards the back end, it was totally involved.
I'll show you some of these pictures that Joan Wilson gave me, and we sort of blew them up.
Are you sure that was Joan or Uchi?
Was it Uchi that gave them to me?
And the little pictures?
Yeah,
that was her.
Uchi gave
Yeah,
them.
she
Okay.
got them.
I wanted to get credit. I'll go on record that Uchi gave me those pictures.
Well, as you can see, most of the damage started back there and came forward.
Yeah.
And of course, you can see how the roof had gone through here then. And over here, naturally, you can see it much better.
It's just, yeah, turn them around so. It was just total destruction, wasn't it?
Total destruction. As you can see, the roof is gone back then, and particularly, of course, the altar and choir loft area and so forth back, which was back then, the pulpit and so forth, was totally gone. And this gives you a shot from inside looking toward the front.
Boy.
Just another picture from the back end of the church, I think it was. And here's another picture showing the inside of total destruction.
Just complete.
Mm-hmm. This fire was declared arson, but I don't think anyone ever was caught or convicted for it. Our Fire Prevention Bureau, in their investigation, declared it as arson fire. And just prior to that, I had seen the other one, but I wasn't on duty. In December of 1966, Pace Memorial burned.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think that was done with what they call Molotov cocktails.
Is that right?
Tossed inside the church, yeah.
The Pace Memorial was on the corner of
Pine and Franklin Street.
yeah, Pine and Franklin, and wow.
Yeah, it was an old church was.
And so they moved the new Pace Memorial over there to by Presswood Apartments.
Well, that's where the old one was.
Is that where the old one was?
Mm-hmm. They just did, when they rebuilt the church, they built it more modern because Pace Memorial had a tremendous steeple. Because I've climbed up it many a time and set fool the clock.
Yeah.
But when they rebuilt it, they just lowered the type of roofing they had on it and did away with the steeple.
The next day, that was January
15th.
1968, that Laurel Street burned. My understanding is that the next day, Uchi went over there to look through the ashes, and this is what she found. You want to describe that?
Well, as you know, after a fire, there's nothing but a lot of debris and a lot of water. And people sweep it out in the streets and anywhere they can and pick up debris, and they just toss it away. And she, I guess with some other people, were back down at the church the next day, and she recovered that from the remnants of the fire and just had it for all these years in our attic.
That's a baptismal cup, isn't it?
Baptismal cup, right. That's exactly what it is, baptismal cup.
And we're sitting here on March the 27th, 2006, and Easter's coming on the 16th of April, and you and Uchi are planning to present this cup to St. Andrew's Church that morning to have two of the members of the confirmation class baptized. And that's just wonderful.
I think it is. I'm glad it's here, and I hope it remains here, and I hope that through the years that it will be known, even though it isn't engraved or anything like that.
Well, we tried, didn't we, Tom?
We tried, but nobody wants to try to engrave it. Some say they can't do it because of the shape. Others don't want to do it because of sentimental value. But getting back to that fire that night, this church, Laurel Street, it goes down about 3 feet underground. It's really not underground, but it's down about 3 feet, because when you came in a side door, you went down some steps, and if you came in the other side, you went down some steps, and you had a well sort of there with a concrete wall. And, of course, water couldn't run out of that church that night, so I had a good friend of mine. He was a lieutenant in another company. He was a plumber. And evidently, I know there was bound to have been some drains in the furnace room, and maybe one outside that door I was speaking of, but they were probably all clogged up and everything through the years, and water wouldn't drain off. So he said, let's go back and break off the toilets in the men's and ladies' room. So we did, and that gave us 4-inch drains. So we got the water out of that quick as possible, and we were able to recover a lot of the deacons' benches that we used to have around here, and there were a lot of chairs and tables which you used in Sunday school. I don't know what happened to them, but they were recovered with very little damage because they didn't sit in the water very long.
How did we've got one stained glass window that's in the Glenn Fellowship classroom. Where did that window come from? Do you know?
No, I really can't say unless it came. It may be all these windows in the church were similar in stained glass.
Yeah.
And back in those days when churches were built, they all had somebody's name where had donated in memory of someone. That may be part of one of those windows that was recovered at the sanctuary.
The whole thing may not have.
That may not be the whole window. That's just a portion of it.
Yeah.
Because you could see the windows were tremendous. They were tall.
Oh, yeah. Tom, after the fire, where did Laurel Street meet?
Well, we had our organist was Celeste Salonica, and he had bought a house on the 300 block Pine. I think it's 305. And he allowed the preacher, Arthur Cooley, to use his living room for an office. And then we had several meetings after that, because I was on the administrative board then at that time. And we met at Olive Parish.
Still on the board.
Yeah, still on it. We met at Olive Parish's house, who lived next door to where I used to live, 137 and a half Cherry. I lived at 139. And we met at his house several times, and then we also met at the Hermitage. They allowed us to use a room out there for our meetings. And through the 5 months following the fire, before we merged with Grace, we had a number of meetings. And of course, there were some meetings that went on that I didn't attend between the pastor and district superintendent and the bishop and so forth about that merger. And we may have had our chairman of the board along with it at that time, but there was a number of meetings to do and to bring it back to the church and the membership and so forth. And then eventually they voted on it and voted to merge. I think most voted, with the exception of a few, in favor of it. And we could understand why, because I think, if my memory serves me right, they may have lived in South Richmond. And seeing where we were coming away, and of course, that was the way I lived over by the Carolyn at that time. And I did go around and visit Westover Hills and Reveille, but I didn't like that, so I gave in. But that was just testing something. That's all it amounted to.
Do you know the story behind why they chose the name St. Andrews?
Well, I know that they didn't want to name it Laurel Street. I know they didn't want to name it Grace, because I don't think because of the two congregations. And I was told it had nothing to do with St. Andrew's Episcopal, where we met for services after the fire.
I know that they were very generous in offering their space.
They certainly were. We used the assembly hall where I went to school there.
That's where Harry Baldwin was the priest there then, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's a great guy. It seems like to me they had people from both congregations submit names. And how it was decided and who decided, I don't have any idea. I didn't have anything to do with it.
Pretty good choice, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. That's right. It is a good choice. It was a good name.
What do you remember about the beginning stages here after y'all voted to merge with Grace? Because were there trailers on this lot then? Or,
that was a big modular building, which probably sits close to where the front of this church is. And somewhere back in here was a big house. And of course they held their services in the building and some Sunday school classes in the house.
Yeah.
And but we went right to work with I guess with the insurance money that was recovered. I don't know, I've always heard it was around $170,000. With the insurance money, and
that's $1968 and not $2006. So
right.
That's
And I happened to be on, well, I guess that building committee that met with the architect and so forth, and for the design of the church. And but at the congregations, we had to be careful, and sometimes, referring to Laurel Street and people referring to Grace, and there was a little bit, but nothing really that amounted to anything. There was no friction, nothing like that, and through the years that just molded together. And of course, some people did leave, some Grace people. I don't think Laurel. We had seemed like me Gilbert's sister and her husband, Slonica. I think that they left at the time. They were the ones who lived in the south side, too. But it went along pretty well, and before you know it, we had leveled this place and built and opened it up, the Sunday school part of this building. The
initial phase was...
The initial phase, and we held services in that.
Yeah. Is that why there are two steeples on this church?
I don't know. It could be.
What I had guessed was that was the first phase, and they put a steeple on it, and then they went ahead with the building of the sanctuary. Was the wing where the office and all that, when was that built? Was that part of the initial phase?
That was the initial phase. That was with the initial phase with the Sunday school hall and what rooms we had back after Sunday school classes, and the office and the pastor's study and so forth, and the two bathrooms. One bath. It was the men's bathroom was downstairs, and the ladies was up at that time, and we met in there for church services and so forth. And I guess it was about less than a year before we got back and got the sanctuary built, And I think we based that on we didn't want to go Some people wanted a contemporary type, modern type church. Others didn't. So I think the architect did a pretty good job in combining both, so to speak, where you didn't have strictly the old type of church, and then we didn't have just the modern type church. And of course, I think one of the things that was I can remember was by some of the older members. We get to Gilbert, Ollie Parrish, and Ed Millers, and people like that. Definitely wanted that altar rail.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was made sure that was put there.
That's the traditional part of the church that nobody was willing to sacrifice.
Right.
Yeah. What do you remember about, do you remember when it was dedicated? I've never seen a program or anything from the dedication of this building. I know there's bound to be some stuff.
I don't know the exact date. It had to be in somewhere, I would say, latter part of 1969.
Yeah.
When it was dedicated. Of course, in June of 1968, naturally, the merger came, and it was considered St. Andrew's United Methodist Church then. But when the building and the sanctuary was open, then the dedication, I don't know the exact date of that. I don't know whether that's tail of 3 churches or not. It might be in there.
I'm sure it is.
Donald Tracy could tell you.
Yeah. And so, after all these years, you're still on the board. And
I've been off and on, but
you've been on more than you've been off.
Probably so,
Yeah.
but I've been on that.
But
been on
just
some
like
committees
just
and
like
things.
this, your service is a link, a direct link to the history of this church that goes all the way back to Laurel Street.
Yeah, I do go back a little ways back into that, and a lot of fond memories, and a lot of things I'll never forget about it.
And a lot of fond memories here too, at St. Andrews.
Oh, certainly, and getting close to 40 years now.
Yeah.
Getting close to 40 years.
Anything you want to add, Tom?
No, the thing that I'm glad I grew up in Laurel Street, and I'm glad that I am now and have been a part of St. Andrews for a long time.
Yeah. From the beginning.
From the
From
beginning.
the very beginning. That's right.
As Uchi would say, a charter member.
A charter member. That's right. Thank you, Tom. You've done a great job.
My pleasure.